The Actual Magician's Bookshelf Vertical Live. I'm streaming live from the library, or library number one at least, where the most of the books are for reference and for current writing and so forth. And what I'm going to do today, because I've got to do it anyway, is a segment I'm going to call 10 out, 10 in, which is basically 10 books that I'm clearing out of the library. I'm putting these books away, likely because we finished a writing project on these particular books. And then I'm going to just go through 10 of the books that are currently in the reading pile itself. So this is 10 books out, 10 books in, and I'll just briefly talk about why we've had these books out, why these books are of interest, and to our current projects, our current live projects, and then some of the books that I have in my pile of 10 books to start reading, or to continue reading, or to make reference notes from are likely they're a sort of teaser for upcoming projects and things that will be down the pipeline as far as the writing and publishing actually goes. So welcome to the live if you're joining this as a live, welcome to the recording if you're watching this as a recording. And if you're joining the live, or even after I put this up, feel free to ask any questions on the books. That's what these lives are really for, that if you just happen to be passing through the library whilst I'm tidying up a little bit, then you can join me for a little while, going through the books and talking about them and having a chat about them as well. I'm happy to answer any particular questions that you might have. So at the moment, these 10 books are actually only a small section of all of the books that I'm now putting away, because we finished the Spiritual Key to the Tarot book. So this was the book. This is a slightly, I think, an earlier print version. Yeah, you can see the mark along the back, a draft print of this. So now that we've finished this book, and whoops, because of all of the references that we had to use for it, there are a lot of footnotes in this because it's fully annotated on Waite's work. I can at last put away all of the books that we used for the Waite project, and we used several hundred books, I think, in total for reference. So this pile is basically the Arthur Edward Waite books, just a selection of them, and they come from both, a lot of them are on Waite, but some of them were referenced by Waite as well. So that's why we've got them. Now, I'm going to go quickly through these and then quickly through the other books that are now replacing these in coming into the library. So this first one is one of Bob Gilbert's books, and this is a collection of writing. This is on Thomas Vaughan, an alchemist. This is on John Dee and Robert Flood, that Waite was so widely read and so well researched on the esoteric literature of the Middle Ages, and he wrote many, many papers on each of these. The allocution of the 5=6 grade. This is a grade in the Secret Order of the Golden Dawn. And so he was writing a paper for the Golden Dawn full of correspondences, the symbol of the Rosy Cross. And this is on the Tarot and the Rosy Cross, which is one of the papers that he published on Tarot quite early on, this one. So it gives us a better background of his work. Okay, so that's the Hermetic Papers. It's a collection of papers. We have a lot of the originals and first editions that these are taken out of, but this was a useful collection of it, part of the Roots of the Golden Dawn series published by Aquarian. Unfortunately, most of Bob Gilbert's... Oh, hello, Sherry. Hello and good morning. So I'm clearing away these 10 books and replacing them with 10 books for incoming projects as well. That's what I'm just doing as a live. So I thought if people were wondering by the library, the actual magician's library. We could chat about the books. People can ask questions as I put them away and replace them with 10. And I can give some teasers as to some of the projects that we're working on. A lot of these have long pipelines. I mean, sometimes the Waite book was 10 years, really, from the first conception of writing it to its final publication. So some of these are teasers for things that might not happen for several years or fairly soon this year. So, yeah, glad to have anyone along in the live. Even if no one's watching the live, then I'm still doing this as part of my homework, really, for the boot camp that I'm on at the moment with YouTube. So, Hermetic Papers of A. Waite. If you see any Bob Gilbert's books, particularly on Waite, snap them up because they're all out of print now, and they are Waite. Waite's work has been very well compiled by Bob Gilbert, and we did speak to Bob a couple of times. Once, well, mainly around the publication of Abiding in the Sanctuary, to discuss a few things with him. So that's going to go back on the shelves. We'll probably keep referring to it, but it's going back on the shelves. Now, this book by Brunet is 1886, and this is important because Waite mentions it in his bibliography. It's got a nice ex libris here, and this is the amount of research that we did, in the sense of this is a French book on playing cards from 1886 that Waite refers to in his bibliography. And it's really, really interesting because it has examples of cards and very early cards, and also Marseille type cards as well, and illustrated cards, in terms of just not having the pips on them. And so it was beholden to us to go through all of the books. I think there are about 28 in Waite's bibliography, because Waite read everything about the tarot before he published and designed Pictorial Key to the Tarot and the Waite-Smith deck, and this was one of the books he used. So we know that this is the information. There's Justice. We know that he had this information to hand, and he read in French and German and Latin, of course, and so he was fairly aware of playing cards, cartomancy, everything that had been written on it, and so forth. So this is from 1886, and that's going to go back on the shelf with all of the other first editions. Similarly with this one, this is Scaramelli, a handbook of mystical theology, again referenced by Waite. So we wanted to go back, and read what, and sometimes we have bookmarks in these for effects of illumination, the divine darkness of Dionysius. This is a basically description of the purgation, or the sense of mystical experience. And I think this may have been a direct quote from Waite somewhere, probably in Pictorial Key, that we then wanted to reference. So we obviously have the entire book so that we know the context in which it's being referenced. So that's going to go back on the shelf, although I may just finish flicking through it before I actually put it back, because it's got some stuff about the grades of union in the spiritual quest. So that will probably, I might actually, just while I'm here, put a little bookmark in that to remind me that that's got stuff in for the grades. And then that will be marked up with Magister written on there before it goes back on the shelves. So I know that that's a reference, useful reference for the Magister book as well. Right, what else have we got? We've got a book on sacraments. I won't talk too much about that, but we use that for contemporary reference on the Christian sacraments that Waite talks a lot about, because Waite, we discovered, is very much a sacramentalist. So we wanted a contemporary reference. That's a well-known publisher, isn't it? What does that stand for? I can't remember. Society for Promoting Christian Knowledge, the SPCK. So that's a useful book on sacraments from the Christian perspective. And there's a lot of, obviously, decades, centuries worth of discussion on sacramentalism within Christianity itself, but we just wanted a reasonable summary and so on. Same with the Shekinah. This is a well-known book, Madonna Sophia Compton, one of the earlier books on the Shekinah from a sort of slightly esoteric perspective. And again, we had a few quotes from that we wanted to use outside of Waite's writing on the Shekinah. So that's going back on the shelf. And I'd certainly recommend this one for any reading on the Shekinah. So that's Madonna Sophia Compton, and that is, I think this is self-published, is it? The Raphael Group, Berkeley and Kansas City, 2018. But it looks self-published because it's got page numbers where they really shouldn't be. Yeah, that's very odd. I think this is probably some sort of reprint of it, because it's like they've taken the pages and got the page numbers in the wrong places comparatively. Felkin's Inner Order Tarot Trumps, that's one of several very old reprints. This is from 2005, so 20 years ago. This one, copy number 95, I think. And again, this is just some notes and some of the original images from the Golden Dawn tarot that we wanted to reference. And there we have the Fool from the Golden Dawn point of view, with the innocent holding the wolf on the leash and the white roses and so forth. And then some of the text that went with that in Felkin's writing. What else do we have in here? Yeah, we have the sort of more like twins or marriage with the wall in the garden. One of the many variations of the Last Judgment and the Golden Dawn. So these are really how the Golden Dawn would have had their trumps. I'm just wondering which version of the Hanged Man we have here. Yeah, so we have the Hanged Man here. It does sort of hide the other symbolism of the drowned giant, which is quite interesting. And there were at least two major versions of this. Waite went with this version and Crowley went with the other Golden Dawn version, a more alchemical one. So, yep, that's going to go back on the shelves. It's got some rust marks there. It's been around a long time, that one. One of Waite's many books on alchemy. This is more a sort of summary of the lives of different alchemists. George Ripley, famous English alchemist. Paracelsus, of course. Helmont, German, I think, alchemist. So that's basically a summary of some of the more famous alchemists, but again, part of our Waite research. We ended up not writing a lot about Waite and alchemy in the Spiritual Key to the Tarot, because we wanted to keep it more about tarot, but there is a sense of, there's probably another book in there somewhere at some later point. Now, this one's interesting because it's a New Testament in modern speech by someone called Weymouth, and this version, Hodder and Staunton, was published, does it say? Might not actually say. The early 1900s, yeah, 1903. Now, 1903 is interesting because it's a few years before the Pictorial Key to the Tarot and the Waite Smith Tarot in 1909. But this is interesting because it is a sort of modern speech version, one of several such versions of the New Testament. And they came to rejoin the disciples. They saw an immense crowd surrounding them and a party of scribes disputing with them. Immediately, the whole multitude, on beholding him, were awestruck, and they ran forward and greeted him. What are you discussing? He asked them. So it's a sort of contemporary translation of the New Testament, but it's interesting because it's the only place in which it has the particular quote, and I can't remember which section, which verse it's in, that Waite uses. Waite uses the language when he's quoting from the Bible, from this version of the Bible, in several places. And so we knew we had to have this so that we could reference exactly which version of the Bible that Waite was quoting from, because obviously there are many different versions of the Bible. But we suspect that Waite had and was reasonably impressed with Weymouth's New Testament in Modern Speech, because he does quote from that version. And then another Aquarium Press selection of Masonic papers. Waite wrote so much that it's very easy to do collations of his work. Obviously, a tree of life there, the crown, intelligence, wisdom, severity, so Gibora, Hesed, Tiferet, Hod, Netzach, Yesod, and Malkuth, the sort of English translations of those. So, yeah, that's going to go back on the shelf. It feels odd because we've had these books, particularly in the last 3 years, these have literally been all-consuming. So over the last 10 years, they've been collected and compiled and so forth. And then over the last 3 years to finish the book, these it's going to feel very odd to put these back just on a shelf, because they've been sort of living and breathing along with about maybe at least 100 other books that are on the floor. I didn't show you the floor sort of around this area because the whole library floor is knee deep in books. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's at least 14 piles of 20 books high, something like that, on the floor at the moment rather than on the shelves. So they really do have to get back on the shelves because it's a fire hazard amongst other things. And there's the Holy Kabbalah. Sort of lived and breathed this back in the day. This is, it cost £10.95. So that from the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It was in Leeds, and this is one of my long-standing collections. So this I was quoting last, The Four Worlds. But again, we had to have Waite's view of it, not just some other view. And the Doctrine of Cosmology, The Four Worlds again. So that was on a section on Waite and the Four Worlds for the Tarot. Okay, so that's the last of that pile of books. So that's 10 out. So what's coming in? Well, these are a little bit of sneak preview. And these are for a variety of reasons. So I tend to have a bit of an eclectic reading pile at any given time. So this one is just to back up some of the stuff that's in my own books on the Thoth Tarot, the trilogy of books called Secrets of the Thoth Tarot. And this, by Dejah Whitehouse, is very much on the letters and life of Frida Harris with regards to Aleister Crowley. So, hello, Sushmita. So, yeah, this is a interesting, I guess, biography, very, very well footnoted, a Victorian childhood and early adulthood, the Crowley-Harris partnership, and it's based on Percy Harris's memoirs and Frida Harris's correspondence, all sorts of other sources as well. So again, very heavily footnoted. A lot of these are from the York collection that's in the Warburg. So Dejah's had access to the Warburg papers to study this, which are a very well-known source of material for Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley in particular. It's from Gerald York's collection. And yeah, it's a brilliant book, a properly good academic book on Frida Harris's life and some of the artwork. I've got some other artwork in here. Fortunately, it's in black and white, of course. And some of Frida Harris's not so well-known work as well. I make a very good tarot card or meditation sigil. Final Portrait of Crowley, 1947. It's in the York collection. Yeah, so I'm reading that sort of for both for pleasure and for study, because it's more focusing on Frida Harris's work, so I'd recommend this book very much. Also for review, and this is a review copy that I was sent for Lon Milo Duquette's Tarot Architect. Now, it's I'm not quite sure what to immediately make of this, because it says the Tarot Architect, and at first I thought it was similar to our own series called Tarot Life, where we go through a whole year process, and there's a twist at the end of that. Hopefully this isn't a spoiler, but with Tarot Life, an option that you have at the end of that year of exercises is to design your own tarot deck out of the work that you've done over the year. And it sort of builds up to that very deliberately. And I thought this was going to be somewhat similar, Tarot Architect, how to become the master builder of your spiritual temple. And I thought somewhere in the blurb for this, by the end of the book, you'll bring together all of the knowledge you've gained to create your own tarot deck, a tangible reflection of your journey and a tool for continued spiritual growth and divinatory practice. And I thought, okay, so that's about designing your own deck and so forth, but it is far more heavily based on Lon's deck, on a very correspondence-heavy, esoteric, Enochian style deck. And you know, I've met Lon several times. Lon stayed with us at the when he came to our TarotCon, and we had several nice times out in the lake showing him around and stuff. And I can remember seeing he laid out some of these coloured cards on a table at the conference, and wow, they're incredible, absolutely incredible. They are a real living tablet, a structural Enochian tablet for divination or even magic in your pocket. And so this is actually about, in effect, colouring these, looking at the way that you might draw your own version and stuff like that, based heavily on correspondences. So, yeah, as James is saying, that Lon designed the book to internalize the tarot and journey through crafting them. Exactly. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that. And again, it was sent to me a little while ago, but I like to have a lot of time to check through it, read it, try some of the things out before I properly review it. So that's on my pile, my incoming pile, as 10 in, 10 out. Now, this is an odd one, the Changeling. Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, I don't intend to rush through it. I love things that have taken a long time to write and require, you know, a decent steeping yourself in, and so I'm looking forward to that. Lon's stuff is always really interesting, of course. So the Changeling is an autobiography of Murray Hope, or by Murray Hope, of her own life. And Murray Hope, I used to use her work back in the day when I first started, because her work was being published quite a bit. And unfortunately, it tended to fall into a sort of template of here's a book about the rituals of the Celts, here's a book about the rituals of Atlantis, here's a book about the rituals of ancient Egypt. And it just took an almost template form and then just flavored it with whether it was Celtic shamanism or runes or alchemy or whatever it particularly was. It was very, I guess, new age crossed over with the esoteric, and it wasn't brilliantly researched and stuff, but she did write, and I have this already on the pile, a good book on the psychology of ritual magic, which I think was certainly one of the first attempts to consider that seriously, as well as obviously Israel Regarde's thoughts about psychology and occultism. And of course, Dion Fortune, to whom, as Violet Firth, she wrote The Machinery of the Mind, which is way ahead of its time. One of my favourite books of hers because it is so way ahead of its time. But Murray Hope also wrote something on that subject, and I think her work deserves a bit more attention. So I'm reading this next so that I have some context in which to put her book on psychology and occultism that I'm going to do a video on. So I'm looking forward to reading that because I don't know much about her life at all. Obviously, it's an autobiography, so it's not a biography, so it's all in her own words. We only get her side of the story with it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. Anima, I love James Hillman's work, and I want to write about the anima, animus, and some of the psychology, some of the Jungian psychology in particular, in the second Magister volume. So we're just tidying up the first for republication, and we're already looking to finish the writing on the second, which is more about the psychology of the occult. Partly as well why it led me on to reading The Changeling as well. So these are slightly tied together. And James Hillman's work is brilliant, and this is a lot of different things on the anima, and it's quoting collected works. That's Jung's CW collected works. So this is referencing Jung and then explaining it, developing the idea and so forth. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of references back from this back to Jung, but this is hopefully going to be a useful key back into that, because I haven't got time in the rest of my life to read everything by Jung, become a Jungian therapist and work at it to that level of depth. So I'm having to start off with James Hillman as a guide back through a singular topic within Jungian thought, whilst hopefully keeping it in some sort of context. So yeah, any of James Hillman's work I'd highly recommend anyway. Deeper Man, again, this is partly for the Magister. You'll notice there's a theme with the 10 books coming in. They're either reviews for videos or they're towards our next big writing project that I'm working with Charlotte Louise on, which is the series of the Magister, which is going to be far more a summary, a grand grimoire, if you like, of the Western Esoteric and History system that I teach. And there's a lot of psychology referenced in that. So the second book, because that relates to Yesod on the Tree of Life, so the first book will have some rituals in. It's very much about the history of occultism, the structure of it, the grand plan of it, because that's all Malkuth. And then the second book takes us into Yesod and path working, channeling, remote viewing, dream work in particular, the inner guide meditation, etheric, astral travel, rising on the planes, projection into a sphere, all of these sorts of things alongside the psychology of the occult as well. And I noticed I was originally Llewellyn that we're going to do a series of books called Advanced Occultism, and have a new series of advanced topics in occultism. And I was discussing with them producing a book on the psychology of magic and the psychology of ritual. That was several years ago, and unfortunately, the guy who was going to edit all of those passed away. His name escapes me just at the moment, but I noticed there's a new book coming out from another publisher by Richard Kaczynski on that very subject. So hopefully that'll be a useful reference alongside some of the other stuff we're doing at the moment. Hello, Niall, is that how you pronounce it? So the Gurdjieff stuff will both be in the second book and the fifth book, the Tifreth book as well. So I'm reading around Bennett, Burton, Spieth, who else? Colin Wilson even. A lot of people who were Gurdjieff's students, and J.G. Bennett is one of them, Ouspensky. The other books. I'll go back and we'll just do a quick summary when I've sort of gone through these. This is part of the Hedge Witch stuff. I'm just reading a lot at the moment about traditional witchcraft, actual historical academic research on witchcraft, particularly in England. And this is by John Callow, The Last Witches of England, and it's about one of the final trials of witches in England. This is Bloomsbury. It came out fairly recently, I think. 2021, 2023. This is a twice reprinted 2023, 2024. So within the last few years. So I want my research to be, as up to date as possible with this. Excuse me. This is Chaos. To go along, there'll be a follow-up video to this series that I've recently done. Vincent Price. Peter Cushing and Vincent Price, nowhere to be seen. Indeed. Was he in the last Witchfinder or something like that, or Witchfinder General? I can't remember what that film was called. This is Chaos. This is a bit of reading for a follow-up. Shouldn't take too long to read through this. It's a lot of different articles on chaos magic, and some are more of use than others, to me at least, but I'm sure there's the Malleus Maleficarum. That's the one that has the ultimate sign that you'll know that someone is a witch, is that there's no sign at all. And that is one of those political, social, psychological, terrifying truisms, that the sure sign of someone being a witch is that they've managed to do it so well that there's no sign whatsoever. And that's in the Malleus Maleficarum, amongst a lot of other horrific things. So this one is of interest because obviously I was about at the time that chaos magic was being introduced out of Leeds and so forth. And so I've already read through this on the origins of chaos magic, and also there's a Jack Hawkins one as well somewhere fairly early on, just to check my own videos as well, and to make sure I didn't have to put any corrections to my own videos from the actual founder of Chaos Magic, or one of the two main founders of Chaos Magic, Pete Carroll, again, who I went and stayed with back in the day as well. Yeah, I'm going to go through several recent videos and put the full book lists in the comments. I've just not had time to do that yet, but yeah, I'm going to do that in the next few days for sure. Thanks for asking and reminding me, it's useful. This, again, you'll now be not surprised that this is one of the books that I'm reading as background for the second Magister about the evolution of consciousness to the Western Esoteric initiation system. No problems for the badges. I'm going to actually work on bespoke badges for the channel and icons and super thanks things and stuff like that. It's part of this boot camp that I'm on at the moment from YouTube. There's 100 of us in the UK, and they're putting us through this sort of concentrated boot camp of utilizing YouTube, and vertical lives is one of the things that they are encouraging us to do. So that's why I've branched out into offering this format as well. And it's useful to know that there are all of these different channels for sharing the information, particularly stuff that I think is useful, and so people don't have to wade around a load of other stuff. If I can beat them to the punch and be a bit useful, then I can recommend books that will save them a lot of time and be, I think, closer to certainly the way I see the esoteric work. It's not just psychological, it is spiritual and mystical and magical, but there is and practical as well. But there's a level of it that is about awareness, consciousness, and psychology. And so I'm just rounding out my reading for that. And this, again, is an academic book on the whole question about what exactly is consciousness. Is it behavioral? Is it sort of magical and unexplained? Exactly how do people, all the way from Plato onwards, and as Whitehead said, we are all footnotes of Plato in our thinking, but yeah, that's going to be, and again, with this one, I'm not going to read it through in the same way I'm going to read some of the others. This will be just basically dip and dive into different bits of it, see if there's anything useful in here to frame the writing in the second Magister on consciousness and its role in magic and esotericism as well. Now, these last two books that I put on the pile of the 10 incoming ones, I think might be surprising to people, but I highly recommend this one in particular for Western Esotericism, particularly the way I teach it, and also coming out of all of the 10 years of Waite work with Arthur Edward Waite that we did for the other book. It's got a foreword by Ken Wilber, who I think has fallen into a bit of disrepute of late. I was going to go and research that. Well, research as in look on the internet, in this case, about Ken Wilber stuff. Oh, excellent. Toddy with a proper salutation. Well, wonderful use of language there, thank you. Apologies for that, found you yesterday, love your diversity, pleasure. Many thanks. Many thanks for engaging with the diversity of material. Again, I think it's really important to read around. I'm a bit of a geek with reading. I always have been. I always have about 24 books on the go, and I have a pile of science fiction books and other fiction books that I'm reading at the moment, just for the joy of it. And yeah, I enjoy reading, and that's why the channel is actually the Actual Magician's Bookshelf, not the Actual Magician's Temple, Actual Magician's Workshop, all of the other titles I was going to use, but I thought it's about books. I'm about books, so let's make it the Actual Magician's Bookshelf. But this one, I cannot remember. It was only in the last week or so that Jim Marion's name came up, and the context, whatever it was, I don't know if it was on the radio or a YouTube video, more likely to be a YouTube video, but I don't think it was. Maybe it was a reference in a book. I cannot literally remember, even though it was only a week or two ago. It shows the state of my mind at the moment. But so I looked them up, thought I'll get them second. Oh, it was this one. It was this one that was referenced: the death of the mythic god, the rise of evolutionary spirituality. And I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. It's about the ages and the way in which this involutionary unfoldment has developed, how we've seen God, how we've seen the mythic, and then how it's become more mythic, and then also how that's changed. So he actually equates it with Ken Wilber's work and spiral dynamics, which I also have on the shelf. Someone's circled this already. And this is a great book because it's got a load of notes in it and underlining, which I'd always like to see in a second-hand book. And so I ordered that, and then I saw that he'd also written Putting on the Mind of Christ, the Inner Work of Christian Spirituality. I thought, oh, that sounds vaguely interesting. It's along the way of the Waite stuff. But it arrived a couple of days ago. Again, these are ex-library, second-hand copies. And I think, didn't this one have a load of notes in? Yeah, this one has a load of really interesting notes in. The person doesn't like it when they veer too much out of traditional Christianity in the book, which they do a lot. But this book has got a load in about mystical experience. A load in, it also quotes Bernadette Roberts, which is my favorite writer on esotericism. Excellent. Okay, have a good day, James. The edited version, the full version of this will be ready for you by the time you get back. Have a good day. Bernadette Roberts is one of my favorite authors on the highest levels of spiritual, magical, mystical experience, which is the sense of no self. And this book goes through Jim Marion's own experience of it, and it mentions Castaneda, it mentions the ages as well. There's somewhere at the end where, he talks about the age of Taurus, the age of Aries, the age of Aquarius, and so forth. And that is bloody useful for the Magister and my writing on the Aeons, which I'm really fond of. Castaneda, I was really into when I first started. My second occult teacher and someone in our group called the Children of Earth was really into Castaneda, and I read everything. I've got the books somewhere, the old nice paperback versions of them. A Way of Knowing, I think, was perhaps the first one I read. But I think in retrospect, obviously, you come to... Hello, Zos. Good morning. Good morning. In retrospect, to me, Castaneda's story is a fictionalized narrative. And I think several of his students, followers, partners wrote quite negative things about him towards the end. And so we have to take it as just like anything else. You either, what's the quote from Batman? You either live long enough, you either die young enough to be a hero or live long enough to become the villain. So there is a sense of that with Castaneda as well. So I think we have to separate out his story, his narrative, from everything else as much as we can do that with anyone. And this applies to Crowley, of course. It applies to just about every author and creator. So what vilified him? I think to some extent the fact that he passed it off as truth. It reminds me of the current controversy about the Salt Path, this book that became very popular, and then it turns out that not everything was true in it. And in fact, there might have been some nefarious stuff in the author's background that they sort of washed over, that they gave their account as being a true account. And I think originally, but to be honest, back in the day, with the people who were reading Castaneda, and including myself, we all accepted that it was probably not entirely true, that it could entirely be fictional, or it was a mixture. It wasn't like we felt fooled into that. So I think that was one thing that vilified him. And the other was about personal relationships, I think. I don't know if there was an abuse of power or an abuse of authority, power manipulation within relationships. There's something along those lines. I was going to idly look it up at some point and see what the fuss was about that. And it could have been very well justified, of course. I'm not decrying that, but it's interesting to understand the person behind the books as well to some extent. Just going to see if I could, if I had one to hand. I think they're in my, yeah, sorry, I think that pile is in my witchcraft section, which is in a totally different room. So, okay, let's quickly go back through these then. So this is really interesting about the Western Esoteric history system that I practice. So I'm really looking forward to that. And because it's graduated, because it's in stages, because he compares his experience with other people's, that's really useful again for the Magister that we're writing at the moment. And the death of the mythic god looks interesting as well. So these are coming into my reading pile. Then we've got The Evolution of Consciousness by Ewan M. MacPhail. This is Chaos, edited by Peter J. Carroll. The Last Witches of England, John Callow. Deeper Man by J.G. Bennett on the Gurdjieff system. Anima by James Hillman, concentrating on the Jungian thinking on the anima. The Changeling, the autobiography written by Murray Hope about her own life. Tarot Architect by Lon Milo Duquette, which I have to, in order to review. I'm looking forward to that. And then finally, The Lady and the Beast by Dejah Whitehouse. Just to firm up my own understanding of Frieda Harris and Aleister Crowley, I had access to a lot of the same material back in the day from the Warburg, from the York collection, and so I'm fairly confident that my primary source is the same, but Dejah Whitehouse has had access to a lot more material, particularly about Frieda Harris, so I'm just for my own sense of inquiring curiosity, I'm looking forward, loving all of the information in here because it fills out some of the gaps in stuff I've written in the past. And in the going out pile, we had the Holy Kabbalah, all of the books we've used for the Waite book that's now written, a Waite, selected Masonic writings, a New Testament in modern speech, Weymouth, Alchemist Through the Ages, Arthur Edward Waite, one of several private papers on Felkin's Inner Order Tarot Trumps, from the Wari Ra Temple, The Evolution of the Shekinah by Madonna Sophia Compton, Why Sacraments by Andrew Davison. These were all used for research and reference and citations in Spiritual Key to the Tarot, which is now finished and published. A Handbook of Mystical Theology by Scaramelli, and that's because Waite quotes him, and it's got some interesting stuff about, why did I put that there? Oh yeah, the Grades of Union. So it's got this idea of the graduated ascent narrative, which I'm always interested in other references and structures for that. Then this very rare book from 1886 by Brunet, on cartomancy, on card playing. It's mainly about card playing, not so much about cartomancy in French, that we used as a reference because Waite had referred to this. So it shows his knowledge of cards and tarot at the time, going back to Chinese and Indian decks. And Waite was rectifying the tarot away from the idea that it had been developed in ancient Egypt, and he was dead set against that. He didn't believe that, and wanted people to understand that it derives from European playing cards, and this was one of his references in French for that. And then finally, the Hermetic Papers. This is one of about several hundred books we used for the Waite book, cluttering up the floor, that are now being put away because the Waite book is now published, The Spiritual Key to the Tarot, and so all of those books can now go away. And again, we've got plenty of references in here, lots of footnotes and references for further reading beyond Waite and in Waite's other works as well. In fact, the list of Waite books is towards the back here. We've got a reading list by topic, which I hoped would be useful to people. So this is how to read Waite, so you don't have to, by just diving into particular sections of his lifetime work, depending on the subject that you're interested in. Just trying to see where the full list of Waite books is. Somewhere down here, bibliography, appendix. There we go. So that's the complete list of, the main list of what Waite wrote in his lifetime, all the way through. And we can see where the tarot sort of comes in. That is back here in 1909, 1910, by the time the Key to the Tarot and then the Pictorial Key to the Tarot was published. And then he carried on. A lot of these books are actually reworkings of his earlier books as he approached the end of his life, and then finally Shadows of Life and Thought, and then finally The Open Vision that was published. I think that was just after he passed. But Shadows of Life and Thought, quite nicely, was the final book that he wrote. So the life of a proper author there, finally ending with your own autobiography to tidy things up. So that's my 10 in, 10 out. If anyone's got any questions, please ask away in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. But if not, we're going to close off this hour. And I'm going to get to actually putting these back on the shelf and putting these downstairs in order to have them on my reading pile. Put some by the bedside, put some in the library, the main library anyway, and start to read through them over the coming few weeks. And then there'll be books that overlay going out and coming in over that time as well. So I hope this has been of interest to people. Please drop a note in the comments. Please also put a like on the stream. That really helps the stream, apparently. And I'm just testing different times of the day at the moment to offer those. Those books again, the outgoing ones or the incoming ones, or both of them. And don't forget that this will be recorded as well, so you can go back through the recording as well. And I'm going to put a full list of them in the text. So Sandy, welcome. Did you mean this pile of books here, or the books going out, or both? Both, right? Okay, very quickly then. But again, this is it. This will be in the recording. So I'm just going to. I'm not going to read them. Well, I'll read them all out for the transcript anyway. Dejah Whitehouse, The Lady and the Beast. But for more information, see the preceding hour. Dejah Whitehouse, The Lady and the Beast. Let me just work out how I'm going to do this. Right, Dejah Whitehouse, The Lady and the Beast. Tarot Architect, Lon Milo Duquette. The Changeling by Murray Hope. Anima by James Hillman. Deeper Man by J.G. Bennett on the Fourth Way and Gurdjieff work. John Callow's Last Witches of England, A Tragedy of Sorcery and Superstition. This is Chaos, 15 Essays on Chaos Magic, edited by Peter Carroll and introduced by Peter Carroll, with foreword by Ronald Hutton. The Evolution of Consciousness by Ewan M. MacPhail, very academic book on the evolution of consciousness. And then finally, the misleadingly titled Putting on the Mind of Christ, The Inner Work of Christian Spirituality by Jim Marion, forward by Ken Wilber, who also, I think, fell into disrepute like Carlos Castaneda, I think, but I was going to look that up. This is about Christian spirituality, but it's also about stages of awareness and consciousness in the mystical and magical and esoteric and spiritual path as well. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Oh, thank you for the super thanks, Neil. That's very much appreciated. Thank you very much. The Death of the Mythic God, also by Jim Marion, which is about the rise of evolutionary spirituality and how our views on the divine as something being mythic are now possibly a bit more real in terms of it being a more present thing rather than something mythic and unreachable. Then in the books going out, these are mainly because of all of the research for the Spiritual Key to the Tarot, which is now in publication. It took 10 years to write this, 3 hard years and then 3 final hard months. But we had the idea to write this after we finished Secrets of the Waite Smith Tarot in 2015, and we wanted to put all of the Waite stuff in a separate book. So it took 10 years to do the research and reading and thoroughly try and understand Waite's voluminous writing, including, these are the books going back on the shelf, Hermetic Papers of A.E. Waite, excuse me, edited by Bob Gilbert, R.A. Gilbert. Brunei's, I can't even pronounce that, but it's a book on cards. I'll show you it rather than. So Occultus. So this is a book on cards that was referenced, and it's by Joseph Brunei. You can get this as a PDF online, I think, because it's been long out of print and out of copyright. 1886 is the date of this. A Handbook of Mystical Theology by Scaramelli, G.B. Scaramelli. This is, again, something referenced by Waite as well. All of these are part of the Waite work, so they're going back on the shelf. Andrew Davison's Why Sacraments, a contemporary roundup of all of the discussion and thinking about sacramentalism, which is such an important thing to understand the Waite Smith Tarot. For more, see Spiritual Key to the Tarot, where we make the case that Waite is a sacramentalist, and that helps understand and appreciate the Waite Smith Tarot and what he was trying to rectify with it. The Evolution of the Shekinah, an early book on the Shekinah by Madonna Sophia Compton. Felkin's Inner Order Trumps, Portal Publications. This was a limited edition back in 2005. This has some of the images of Felkin's Golden Dawn style tarot in it. Alchemists Through the Ages, just a run through of different lives of alchemists by Arthur Edward Waite. The New Testament in Modern Speech, this is published by Hodder and Stoughton by Weymouth a few years prior to the Waite-Smith Tarot, and it's likely one of the Bibles that Waite himself used, this actual edition of it, because the quotes, a couple of quotes that he uses in pictorial key from the tarot are actually from this. They're not from any other version of the Bible, they're from the Weymouth version. And magically enough, I'd read that, I made a note about it, and the following day, I kid you not, I walked into our local bookshop and this was staring me in the face as I walked in. The chances of that are miraculous, but obviously Waite wanted us to have this as a reference. A. Waite Selected Masonic Papers, put together by Edward Dunning, and then finally Waite's Holy Kabbalah. This is my one that I bought from the Sorcerer's Apprentice back in the day, 1095. I was probably about 17 or 18 when I bought this, with my pre-married name, Mark Green, and the Occult Order or group, the networked order, the Bow Repair Nexus, that we were actually, that I co-founded, and we were working with all sorts of Thelemites and Mark magicians and sorcerers and witches and rune practitioners, Mark magicians, all sorts of people came together at the Bow Repair Nexus back in the day to practice ritual and magic. We built an entire Golden Dawn temple for everyone to use, so that was quite a time. And that's the Holy Kabbalah as well. So those books are going out and the other books are coming in. So thanks a lot, everyone. We're at the top of the hour. So thanks for joining me as I've done this. It's been fun, I hope. And I hope you've seen some reference material that might be of interest to yourself as well. So thanks a lot. Again, do drop a like on the stream. It's helpful. A comment on the stream also helps it in the algorithm. And oh, excellent, South Africa, represent Zandil. That's brilliant. Thanks a lot. And I'm going to be doing these lives. I've got a whole different range of segments I'm doing, some walk and talks, some write with me ones, and I'm going to do a read with me tomorrow, Sunday, probably around the same time in the afternoon, where I'm actually going to sit and live stream, not just reading a book, obviously, but discussing it, talking about it, and reading out quotes from it as we go along. Again, just to share what currently fascinates me at the moment as well, and what I think might be useful to anyone interested in the Western Esoteric in history system as I actually practice it. So thanks a lot, and take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and until next time, the worker, as ever, is hidden in the workshop. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.